Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from historic Nashville, Tennessee, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Tuesday. I'm down here getting ready for a bunch of workshops I'm doing. Then I'm heading off to Texas. And yeah, how are you, Kaustubha?
I'm doing all right. You're in the country music capital of the world.
It is the country music capital of the world. It is. It's quite exciting.
Okay.
It's time to bring up my story about how my mom was the manager of Waylon Jennings and
Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson.
Waylon and Willie?
Waylon and Willie, yeah. I grew up with Waylon and Willie. How incredible is that?
You grew up with them? What do you mean you grew up with them?
No one, when I was young, nobody listened to country music growing up in Connecticut, like nobody.
Right.
But Waylon and Willie were part of our life because my mom worked for their manager. So I had tons of...
What did she do?
Yeah, she was like the secretary for all this big management company that happened to be in Connecticut.
Okay.
All right, I'll tell the story if you don't mind. It's such a good story. If you missed it, it's worth getting.
All right.
So my mom loved these people that she worked with. They were so sweet to her. And then she'd send stuff to them while they were on the road, and so she had a rapport with them as well.
With Waylon and Willie themselves?
With Waylon and Willie and their people. And then one day, my mom came home very upset, and I said, "What happened?" I was young; I was like 9 years old. I said, "What happened?" He said, "They've just fired me for no reason, and I'm really upset about it." I was friends with everybody there, and she didn't know what happened, and she went to find out the deal by going back to her boss just for an explanation. Her boss said, "The federal government," she said, "Terry, you've been sending drugs to Waylon and Willie for years in boxes." And
well,
we had
Willie does have a bit of a reputation.
He has a reputation. My mom was like a what do you call that? A drug mule.
Okay.
Don't arrest her. She's 95. But they fired her to protect her. And then the FBI came and they all got shut down. It all got wound up. But so they let her go. They didn't give her an excuse. They just, you have to go, pack your things, go home. Is that a great story or what? I got to put that in my book.
I don't know. What are we meant to learn from it?
Nothing. It's just a good story. Sometimes there's no lesson, Kaustubha. The lesson is there's no lesson. We're here for a short time. Let's laugh a little. Doesn't that count for something?
And we did, but then you went on to say it was a great story and it should be in your book. And that's why we had the question.
It's a great story, man.
Okay.
I got some Ayurvedic coffee today. I don't know what that is.
All right. Oh, by the way, we were talking, I wanted to read a little something for you because we started speaking about something yesterday and I didn't actually make the final point that I really wanted to make.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah. When we were speaking about trust, remember?
No, I don't remember things.
Okay, we're speaking about trust and how you like to really advance in spirituality. You need to be able to place your trust in someone.
Place your faith in somebody. For the doubting soul, there's not benefit in this life nor the next life. We need at least one person, right?
Bhakti is transferred from one heart to another, and we gave examples of how that happened. So, and I was speaking how my wife shared with me something that she heard from Raghunath Swami on that point. But I didn't get to the final point because you see, you make that point, like you need to trust someone, but that's also the kind of thing potentially could be exploited, right? Like, that whole guru kind of thing where it's like, you have to have faith in the guru, and then you feel like, okay, it's my duty to trust this person, but maybe they're not trustworthy, and so on. But actually, so he did make that point that on one hand, yes, it is necessary to go deep into this, to find someone that you can deeply place your trust in, hopefully more than just one person, but yeah, at least one person. But then he flipped it, and he got to the point that I wanted to conclude with, but I never got to, because your responses were so rich and with insights. But he said this. He said, in this world, sometimes people are cheated so many times that they can't have faith in anybody. If you don't have faith in people, trust in people, you can protect yourself from being hurt, but you can't make any spiritual progress either. You can't have any...
Who's saying this?
Raghunath Swami.
Oh my God. It's beautiful.
Okay. He says you can't have any... He says you can protect yourself from being hurt, but you can't make any spiritual progress either. You can't have any satisfying, loving relationships unless you have faith. Now this is where he flips it, right? And he says, so because people have been cheated so many times by people that they have trusted, in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, it's hard to have faith. So this is where he flips it. So the greatest duty of every Vaishnava or every Bhakti-yogi is to act, live, and speak in such a way without hypocrisy that people can trust us.
Wow.
And to put our trust in those who are sincerely and honestly trying to represent Guru and Krishna, right? So it's really about, in one sense, the most important, both points are valid, and both are important. In other words, yeah, we do need to find someone that we trust, but also we need to become those trustworthy people. And if I want to become an agent of, of God, of good, of spirit, of spirituality, of harmony, whatever you want to call it, that's where it really begins, right? Is becoming trustworthy. Just want to throw that out there.
That was good, man. Me likey.
All right.
Very good.
Okay, I'm glad you like it.
No.
I just wanted.
I feel like I needed to hear that.
Because afterward, after the show, he said, "I was like, oh, I forgot to bring that part in." So I just wanted to bring that in.
Thank you.
All right.
Speaking of beautiful little nugs,
yeah.
Would you like a nug? Would you like a nug?
Yeah. What do you got?
If you're new to the show, nugs are little bits of wisdom that we can put in our pocket, take home with us, carry throughout the day. We call them nugs because it's short for a little nugget of nectar. This is from...
What's the nugget?
This is... Well, people are joining for their first time. If I could just say you want a nug, and you're like, yeah. No one knows what we're talking about.
Well... Okay, go ahead.
It's like wisdom says we have our own language. Have you ever noticed that?
All right. Okay. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, this is from... Do you pronounce it Lao Tzu?
What about the one before that?
The Talmud? Well, no,
yeah,
from the Talmud.
From the Talmud. Because they're related. These two are related to each other.
Okay. Alrighty. Here you go. People who try to force circumstances become their slaves. The slaves of the circumstances.
So the slaves of their own circumstances.
Yeah. People who try to force circumstances become their slaves. Those who use them, the circumstances, become their masters.
Excellent editing you did there, Raghunath. I like that. The circumstances.
Built-in purports.
So read that again.
People who try to force circumstances become their slaves. Those who use them become their masters.
Okay. I think this relates to some of the stuff that we were reading yesterday, but why don't you read the next one too? And they're related.
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu.
There is nothing in this world more tender and more pliable than water. Yet hard and rigid things cannot resist it.
Mm-hmm. Little drops of water wear away the stone, they say, right?
Yeah. Like a river. You know, these river rocks are really soft. Sea glass.
Okay. All right.
There is nothing in this world more tender and more pliable than water, yet hard and rigid things cannot resist it. Weakness defeats strength. Tenderness defeats rigidity. Everyone knows this law, but no one acts upon it. The weakest in the world gain victory over the strongest. Therefore, there is a great advantage in humility and silence. Only a few people in this world are truly humble.
Yeah, when I heard that, this is something in my own life I struggle with a lot. Like I feel like I understand this theoretically, but I haven't fully realized it. And so I have trouble making it play out fully in my life. Like I feel like, for instance, just like sometimes holding my tongue, like I'll say something that I feel is totally, justified to say, but it's not the wisest thing to say. And it's not,
right. It's not going to give you the result you want.
It doesn't lead to the best results for myself or for the people that I'm dealing with.
Sure.
And ultimately it leads to some kind of erosion in trust or erosion in harmony, or something like that. But there's something about, maybe it's, like New York upbringing or whatever it is, but like you want to force the results, right? You feel like,
right.
Okay, let's make this happen. And basically like everybody, you just look all over, like everyone's just trying to muscle the way through life and, adjust things. Yeah.
Barking.
Barking.
Right.
Pushing in different ways.
Stuff.
Yeah. But, that tenderness defeats rigidity. That he says this, everyone knows this law, but no one acts upon it. And then he says, only a few people in this world are truly humble. Like, in other words, only a few people are really able to recognize that and have the patience and the I guess the freedom from ego, freedom from false ego, to be able to actually live according to this, live deep realization of this, and allow it to like play out in their lives. Anyway, that's what I was thinking. But it's
practice.
Related.
And it's practice, and it's part of what we're working on.
Yeah.
It's part of our whole game plan.
And the one from the Talmud that said people who try to force circumstances become their slaves. I mean, that's what you see. That's what comedy is built on, right?
Right.
It's
frustration, comic frustration.
Yeah. Every Seinfeld episode is about, trying to force something to happen, and then it goes the other way, and you become the slave of the circumstances, right? The circumstances.
George gets a toupee.
Whatever it is. Right?
Go right.
Yeah, let me train.
No, I was bald. I'm not bald. Don't you get it, George? You're bald. Correction, I was bald.
So in any case, let's keep this in mind as we go back and enter into Bhagavatam today, because I think certain things there, like we're hearing things about, like, for instance, we heard this statement yesterday, right? That one should be satisfied with like whatever money they make easily.
Right.
Right. So that's, to me, that's related to what we're hearing here, right? But people can interpret that different ways. People could hear that. Well, let's read it.
Let's get into it
and get into it. Sound good?
Would you still like me if I wore a toupee?
Yeah, I would like you. I don't know if I'd like the toupee.
Hate the toupee, not the person who wears the toupee. That's one of our wisdom of the sages. People wear them.
They do.
Well, it was more popular when I was growing up. Like a lot of men had them. My math teacher, great math teacher, had a toupee.
Well, it was men were more, baldness was like more a problem back then or something like that.
Well, now everybody shaves their head and they're sort of cool, like me. That's my thing. I'm bald. I'm not doing this because I'm a pure devotee. I'm doing this because male pattern balding. I just don't like how it looks on me.
I remember, just being into hardcore when I shaved my head and just went into school. People freaked out. People don't get that
you
now,
had a shaved head in high school. That was really weird.
Yeah.
What to speak of, like a mohawk. My 7-year-old's like, I want a mohawk. I was like, what are you talking about, a mohawk? You're 7 years old, man. It's like everything's normal now. What do you got to do to be crazy?
He could do it.
Tattoo your face.
Even that's getting popular.
Yeah, it's everyone's doing tattooing your face. You know what's the punkest thing you could do now? No tattoos. Mara is the most punk person I know. Just nothing. She's got nothing going on, and it's radical.
All right.
I don't mean nothing going on. That was mean. I didn't mean it like that. I meant nothing going on in your body, and that sounds weird too. Nothing going on. You got no tattoos on your face and body, and neck. Okay. Sorry about that.
All right, we ready, Raghu?
There's 2 days in a row. Once was calling Mara like a tick yesterday, and today calling her nothing going on. All right, what text are we on?
Well, first got to chant the mantras.
Narayanam namaskrityanam chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated. In loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanaptimurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Midatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances at their lotus feet.
So, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 27, Mara.
Yes.
Text 9.
Text 9.
But let's go back to text 8, because that's relating to those nuggets that you read.
All right. For his income, a devotee should be satisfied with what he earns without great difficulty. He should not eat more than what is necessary. He should live in a secluded place and always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, compassionate, and self-realized.
Great verse.
Right? Dropping the pin, telling us how to behave, how to think, how to act, how to, right? Respond.
Yeah. Again, we discussed yesterday how just as a doctor prescribes not only the medicine, but the lifestyle and diet and so on that needs to go on with the medicine so that the medicine will be properly absorbed within the system and become effective. So a guru is giving the object of meditation, which earlier was given as the hearing and chanting about Krishna. And then the lifestyle is given with that, to make sure that the mind can become absorbed in it. And if we're living a lifestyle that's stirring up the mind, distracting the mind, then we're not going to be able to meditate.
Sure.
And so here we're hearing about how, all these important things, how you eat is going to become important. How you earn a living is going to become important. Where you live is going to become important. And how you treat people is going to be important. And so the previous verse and this verse deal with how to treat people as well as all the other things I just mentioned.
It's unbelievable how many of us are into the yoga scene. None of this is stuff ever talking about. No one's talking about this, right? Peaceful, friendly, compassionate, self-realized.
I mean, sometimes it might be, but maybe the full context isn't. Not enough, and not with enough realization, and not with, I think we could, I don't feel that myself, I'm perfectly living it, myself.
Well, you are, I was thinking about it yesterday. You are in a secluded, even though you're, how many 8 people in New York City, 9 million people in New York City, you have a secluded place. Your apartment is like a transcendental cave, if you think about it. Yeah, it's like a little cave. Mm-hmm. You go there, you find your peace, and you go out and you give your peace to the world. And if you find yourself getting too frustrated, you go, I'm going home. I'm going back to my cave.
You can do that. It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it. Text 9.
Well, no, let's read some of the commentary on this, though. This is what I want to get into, right? Because now Prabhupada's going to take this statement about what was said earlier, that for their income, the Bhakti-yogi should be satisfied with what they earn without
that makes me not want to work.
Difficulty. You don't want to work anyway.
So does that make us lazy?
You're one of these rock star guys. You don't really want to work, do you?
I work my butt off, man. I'm in Nashville right now working.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So here's
the top. Are you okay? You got a place?
Well, let me see. Yeah, go ahead. Take it from the top.
Everyone who is accepted a material body, check, must maintain the necessities of the body by acting or earning some livelihood.
Clear enough.
Got that. A devotee should only work for such income as is absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
He should be satisfied always with such income and should not endeavor to earn more. You never ask for a raise? And more simply and more simply to accumulate the unnecessary. There we go. We don't want to earn more just to accumulate the unnecessary.
Mhm.
I've got a whole basement filled with the unnecessary.
Okay, but but someone might say, well, that just sounds like your justification of your tool of oppression here, your religious tool of oppression, where you're just telling me not to be ambitious and kind of go out there and get what I. In other words, let's keep reading because I think
I don't know. I think we're sick of stuff. I think Americans are sick of stuff. We all want to downsize. We all want to like upcycle things. We're sick of buying new things. I think a lot of people
are. But we're still doing it, so we're addicted to it. We might be sick of it, but we're still
I'm just saying there's a big movement, a current of people who are like, no, simple living, tiny homes, move to the countryside, grow your own food.
But it hasn't tipped any balances yet. Let's put it that way.
Maybe not. I don't know. Up here, everybody's a gentleman farmer. So, right, Mara's got a big little garden, right, Mara? Everybody's farming up here.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. It's tipping. You just got to jump on the bandwagon, Kaustubha.
Well, keep reading.
Okay. A person in the condition, a devotee should
no, a person in the condition.
A person in the conditioned state who has no money and is always found working very hard to earn some with the object of lording it over material nature. Lording it over material nature.
Want to try that again?
A person in the conditioned state who has no money is always found working very hard to earn some with the object of lording it over the material nature.
Okay.
Interesting statement, huh? Kapila Dev instructs that we should not endeavor hard for things which may come automatically without extraneous labor.
Okay.
Interesting. The exact word used in this connection is yadrichaya, which means that every living entity has a predestined happiness and distress in their present body. This is such an interesting concept, isn't it?
Okay.
It goes It goes against a lot of our ideas of like we can create our future, we can create our destiny. No, you can't. No, you can't. It's already predestined.
You can and can't, right? Because in other words, you created where you're at. But let's hold on.
Let's talk about this balance today. This is huge.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. This is called the law of karma. It is not possible that simply by endeavors to accumulate more money, a person will be able to do so. It's true, man. You ever see people just work, accumulate a lot of money, and then they lose all their money? Ever see that happen?
Prabhupada's going to get into that right now and just keep going. Or they may not even get it.
Perhaps I'm thinking like
Prabhupada. Yeah, keep reading.
We are advised to let these things come as predestined.
Mm-hmm.
We should engage our valuable time in prosecuting Krishna consciousness. In other words, one should be satisfied by his natural condition. If by predestination one is put into a certain condition of life which is not very prosperous in comparison to another position, one should not be disturbed. He should simply try to utilize this valuable time to advance in Krishna consciousness. Advancement in Krishna consciousness does not depend on any materially prosperous or distressed condition. It is free from the conditions imposed by material life. A very poor man can execute Krishna consciousness as effectively as a very rich man. One should therefore be very satisfied with his position as offered by the Lord. I think it's safe to say that we know very poor people and we know very, very rich people that are both great souls, right?
Sure.
Like, yes.
Now, when I hear that commentary, I'm hearing objections on two sides, right?
Okay.
I can hear when I read that, I hear Srila Prabhupada telling me that more or less what Lao Tzu was saying and what the Talmud was saying, right? In other words, you can work really hard to try to change your external circumstances with the faith that if you can do so, you're going to be happier. Or you could, in general, accept the circumstances as they are and learn to live with them and through them. And as the Talmud was saying, right? What was it again? That It had to do with the second part of that statement. The first part was people who try to force circumstances become the slaves of the circumstances. Right? So I'm working real hard, but I'm not any happier. And it's actually, I wanted to get the right car, but I had to work harder to get it. And then I had trouble with the car. When we read that thing, what was that thing that we read a week or two ago? It was a great Instagram post about the person. I'm forgetting, Freya. What
Freya.
is it?
Yeah.
Freya, who was always desiring that particular car, and then she finally got it, but then the whole thing was rusted out. You become then she had to sell it.
Slave of the
You
circumstance.
become a slave of the circumstances. So people who try to force circumstances become their slaves, the slaves of the circumstances. For those who use them become their masters. Let me accept, in a sense, use the circumstances that have presented themselves to me and adapt to them as water adapts, as we're hearing Lao Tzu say, right? So, I'm hearing Srila Prabhupada in this commentary saying that the practice of yoga, it requires a focus of mind that is one of the most difficult things in life to do, but it leads to the highest and greatest results. Results on a personal level, as well as results on a community wide. If we can plug into this, right? If we can let go of the illusion that our happiness comes through external things, then we can accept external things as they are and go into a very deep level of spiritual focus. And that's what wise yogis do. Okay, when I read it, that's what I'm hearing. Now, if I were to read that commentary today, and if I were, let's say in a college campus, if I were to read that today, and if I were to read that when you and I first got into this, say in the 80s, I would hear two different objections. I feel right?
You're already playing the devil's advocate here. You're like, how would people react if you were to, tell this to somebody on the street? So there's an 80s person. What would the 80s people say?
I think that the 80s objection would be more related to what you brought up. Like, in other words, this is saying that one shouldn't have personal ambition. This is like some hippy-dippy, mumbo-jumbo, Eastern, fluffy stuff.
Yeah, they'd be saying, like, you have a potential, you can create your destiny, you are... Yeah, I sort of lean towards that as well, although I work my ass off and I don't have that much. Maybe I should just do nothing and I'll not have that much. Why am I working so hard to have... The problem is my work. I love my work. My work is this. My work is going out.
This is my point, is that objection, if it was on that level, is a very surface level objection from a person that has not truly understood what's being said. You haven't gone deep into it enough to really, because it's not that yogis were lazy. It's not that they lacked a type of ambition, but they had a spiritual goal that they were very focused on achieving. That brought very tangible results that you're unaware of and can't appreciate. So you're hearing this message and you're very quickly judging it as something against your ethic. And where's your ethic getting you anyway? That's,
sure.
I guess that would kind of be my answer. Now, if I were to read this commentary on a college campus today, I think you'd have a very different objection. What do you think it would be?
What do you think? I don't know.
I think it would be today. You're telling me that people that are poor should just be happy being poor.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they should endeavor to be poor.
You're trying to just hold us down.
This is a tool. This is a religious, tool
of oppression.
A tool of oppression that's being used to keep social classes in their place. And you're telling us that we all get what, we all deserve our plight, and now you're taking all the responsibility away from the oppressor. And so my response again would be that this is a very superficial approach.
Sure.
It's like you haven't penetrated very deeply into what's going on here, and then they might, if they were more educated, they might begin to throw out, examples from the caste system and how this whole thing is played out in different ways.
Right.
But I would say,
there's Kaustubha, you're pretty sharp.
So much can be said about that. So much can be said about it. But my first thing would be this. This would be my first. Well, maybe I'd start with I don't know where I'd start, but here's one point. Maybe the most significant and fundamental point is that, here we're reading something that's advising us to let go of the idea that our happiness is going to come through external things. Focus on the internal, right? Learn to live a more simple life. And it's that message, that's like so essential for all of the different social problems that we have right now, beginning especially with the earth and how we treat the earth. It's like in order for us to clean up this earth and save it from the horrible trajectory that it's going in right now, we got to
clean up our own act.
We got to clean up our own act, and that
our own act. We're completely we're in it, and we're blaming everybody out there. We're enmeshed in it.
Right. We've become, we've breeded a type of selfishness that's got us, callous to the earth, callous to each other.
And normalized it, right?
Normalized it all.
Normalized selfishness.
To the point where it can't be sustained, right? To the point where things are starting to fall apart.
What are we going to do?
And now here's an ancient wisdom message and we see, hey, it's not just here in your Indian caste system, Bhagavatam, Vedic thing. You're also going to find it in other spiritual traditions.
I've got an idea,
kind
my
of
friend.
thinking. Yeah.
We're going to create Wisdom of the Sages Zoomland. Zoomland is where we buy a big. What do you look at your wife and he rolled his eyes at his wife? Did anybody see that? He's just like, what is he? Where's he going?
Zoomland.
No, Zoomland. Trust me. We got a big.
I think we were just talking about getting
forest meadows.
Okay.
Hardwood trees, nut trees, mature nut trees, and we all get off of Zoom finally and come to Zoomland, where we live simply in cottages. And we do this every morning in person, where we can touch people, hold each other's hands. Lori Pag, how are you? That's how I greet people. Everybody's in a line. Instead of, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, every morning I say hello to everybody on Zoom. But I do it on Zoom, man. We're feeding into this. Let's just embrace each other. Lori Pag, how are you? I'll say Johansson, give me a hug. Lee, come here. Let me embrace you and lift you in the air. Come on. Like that. And then Mara's in charge of the garden. Ariana's, clipping trees. David Charles Wilson is, working the field. Banjo Mike is making various musical instruments for us.
The birth
Zoomland, people. Who's with me? Put it on the board.
Raghunath's cult commune.
I guess that's
episode 576.
Yes. And then, of course, we have Christian writer Jayashree Triolo and Holly Ball. Storing weapons there, because you never know when you're going to need
where
those.
This is going.
Yeah, okay. you got to stockpile weapons because they're going to come for us.
Right. And remember, we're talking about placing trust in at least one person. I will be that person.
I'll be that person. It all sounds good, right? Doesn't it?
Right. So in any case, that's one point. Is that here's a wisdom tradition teaching us about a type of simplicity that is not only beneficial individually in terms of one's yoga practice, but also is essential in terms of living as a community, right? Harmoniously and in harmony with nature and in harmony with each other. Now, beyond that, I'd say there's other messages. Like, you haven't looked too deeply into this if you haven't also recognized points like this. Like, in other words, what this law of karma teaching comes with. It also comes with a lot of the Vedic teachings are if you are a wealthy person, you must give in charity, right?
Yep.
Otherwise, karma is really going to get you bad. So it's
Can I borrow $5?
So that message is there. There's also the message about another message is that the people that are speaking this are the Brahmins, who have no paychecks and live off charity and live incredibly simply, And
that brings us to our Patreon account, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
And another point is that there's so much about the king and the king's responsibility to provide for every subject. And that if they don't, or that whether they provide or not, that the king accepts, 25% of the karma of the entire nation?
Something like that, yes.
Right. So in other words, that there's many messages coming from different angles in this. So if you're just going to come out and on a surface level start to criticize this stuff, and this is what people do, right? They don't go deep into thinking about things. They don't examine things very deeply. They just get triggered by different statements, and they reel off responses that often have more to do with their own ego than with the actual concern, right?
Beautiful.
Okay, so
everybody's getting triggered nowadays. That triggers me.
So whether it's a left-wing trigger like this is a tool of oppression, or a right-wing trigger, this is some nonsense about like not being ambitious in life, you haven't even begun to look into this very deeply, right? So get off your high horse and bow down, mister. Right?
Bow down, mister.
Like, before you just start rejecting everything in the world, left and right, why not open your mind and really try to find out about it? And you might find that we all have a lot in common here, you know?
Mm.
So anyway,
we need to find a place for the others to live. The others can have another farm over the meadow, over the mountain ridge, and we can come together for feasts with the others and maybe volleyball or something like that.
All right. We want to read the next verse?
No response. Mara, did you notice that? No response whatsoever. Next verse, yes. 3:27:9. One's seeing power should not be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter. One's seeing power should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter. And one should not unnecessarily identify himself with the body and thus become attracted by bodily relationships.
Okay. You want to read that again?
What? One's seeing power should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter. And one should not unnecessarily identify himself with the body and thus become attracted by bodily relationships.
Why don't you read the commentary?
The conditioned souls are eager to identify with the body and consider that the body is myself, and that anything in relationship with the body or possessions of the body is mine. Right? Mm-hmm. In Sanskrit, this is called aham mamata, and it is the root mamata, and it is the root cause of all conditional life. A person should see things as the combination of matter and spirit. He should distinguish between the nature of matter and the nature of spirit. And his real identification should be with spirit, not with matter. By this knowledge, one should avoid the false bodily concept of life. How do you actually do that? Come on.
What do you mean?
Well, I've got children. What am I supposed to say? Okay, kids, go. You're free. Go play on the highway. You know what I mean? If you really live this verse,
talk about superficial interpretations of things.
If you really live this verse, it's sort of like I have no unnecessarily identify himself with the body and then become attracted by bodily relationships.
One should not unnecessarily identify themselves with the body and thus become attracted to body. You know, because when we got this whole thing started, it talked about attraction and aversion, right? What was it, text number 6 or 7? Text number 7. One has to see every living entity equally and without enmity towards anyone, and yet without intimate connections with anyone. And we discussed that, and we said that really what this means is I'm not looking at some people are my friends and some people are my enemies, and so on. Right? I have a sense of equality. I'm not judging people based on their externals. I understand the spiritual equality that every living being has. So this verse is just more or less saying the same kind of thing, right?
I'm just playing devil's advocate, poking at you.
No, but this, anyways, it's kind of concluding the section that we're reading, and I think this next verse will do it. Text
One should be situated in the transcendental position, beyond the stages of the gunas, or beyond the stages of material consciousness, and should be aloof from all other conceptions of life. Thus realizing freedom from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky.
Okay. Yeah, so, it's interesting. Why don't you read it one more time?
One should be situated in the transcendental position, beyond the stages of material consciousness.
Okay.
One should be aloof from all other conceptions of life, like I am spirit, I am spirit, I am spirit. Thus, realizing freedom from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky.
What does that mean to you, Raghunath? just as one sees the sun in the sky.
Oh, well, the first part reminds me of one should be situated in transcendental position means there has to be a regular hearing of what I actually am, as opposed to what I'm not. And that's important because the material world and culture is telling me what I am. Okay, and they're trying to sell me something according to what you are. Okay, men over 50 are going to look for these products and stuff like that, and they reconfirm a false identity of myself. So I need to hear on a regular basis. That's part of my sadhana. I need to hear that I'm actually spirit. My joy comes from spiritual food, so to speak, not from material food, because I'm a spiritual being. I need to be satisfied. That is just sort of the simple math of this.
I meant specifically about the sun in the sky.
Thus, realizing from false ego, one should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. I don't know.
Well, I did a little research. When I read that, it seemed obvious to me.
Oh, really?
And the
Does
two
it mean you're sort of
commentaries-
just free floating?
I don't know what you mean.
Does it
by
mean you're
that.
glowing?
But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur had one explanation, and Srila Prabhupada has another explanation. Srila Prabhupada's explanation is like this. This is how I understand it. Is that he's saying, just like you look up and you see the sun in the sky, it's the most obvious thing in the world. You see it, it's there, you perceive it, there's no doubt about it, the sun's there.
Yeah.
In the same way, with the same kind of firm conviction, you should understand and see just as clearly that I'm not this body, that this is something that I'm just passing through temporarily. This is not me. My body and my mind are not me. This is just equipment that I'm using, and I'll pass through it and pick up another set of equipment. Just as clearly as I can look up and see the sun in the sky, just as clearly I should be able to see this or understand this. Right? And
I like that.
Vishwanath Chakravarti's Thakur's commentary is a little bit more hard to understand, and it's a different kind of translation, but it's talking about like the eye itself being like almost like the vision itself being bright. You know, it's like the sun might look at us, but the sun is illuminating us, and that we should see with an eye that lights up everything, something like that. But when I saw this, it seemed to me, the connection seemed to be clear, that the very first verse of this chapter spoke of the sun as well. Remember that verse?
No.
Where Kapila Dev says
I don't.
to Devahuti, he says, when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because they are unchanging and they do not claim proprietorship, then they remain apart from the reactions of the modes, and although abiding in the material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on the water. Right?
Mm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I read that?
now I do.
So in other words, the sun is always steady in the sky, but if we identify with the reflection of the sun on the water as being the real sun, then it takes on the nature of the water, which is shifting and changing and rippling and so on.
And now we bring back this verse using that sun analogy.
So now we heard all so again, in the first verse, it's talking about not claiming proprietorship. It's talking about being unaffected by the modes of material nature. We heard how to live that in all these verses, about, how we relate to other people, where we live, how we earn a living and so on. We learned how to live aloof from the material modes in doing that. And then we got back to the sun. Now you should see yourself like the sun. In other words, even though I'm moving around in this body, even though I have to go to work in a certain place, even though I have family responsibilities and social responsibilities to take care of, it seems like the rippling water. Everything's changing, everything's shifting, everything's unsteady. But I'm seeing myself like the sun, even though I'm in the midst of all of this, right? I'm seeing myself as always steady because I'm not identifying with all of that. I'm firm, like steadily situated in my own spiritual nature, and I don't lose touch with that even while I'm moving through the world.
I like it.
Yeah, that's
Now I
anyway.
get
That's what
it.
I thought. Yeah.
Thank you. You
Okay.
shed some light on that for me.
Okay, Rogan. Thank you.
Thank you.
The
All right.
next two verses are trickier.
It's tricky. It's tricky to rock around. Ready?
Yeah.
As a liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of Godhead, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection, even in the false ego. He is the support of the material cause, and he enters into everything. He is absolute, one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy.
And then the next two verses use this analogy that's a little tricky, but let's see.
All right. Text 12. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Pretty good. Continue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Text 13.
You didn't find that tricky at all?
No, I thought that was...
The presence of the
unless I
Supreme Lord
missed
can be
something.
realized just as the sun is realized in the reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Well, why the two? Why is this a double reflection? And then read the next text.
The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego, and then in the body, senses, and mind.
And text 14. No, maybe that's where we should just stop right there, text 13.
It's pretty cool. So,
Yeah?
well, to the degree we identify with any of the material coverings, from the flesh to the mind to the ego, etc.,
Yes. I see it is tricky, huh?
a little tricky.
Okay.
A little tricky.
So it's talking about perceiving two things, or inferring two things, inferring the presence of two things. One, text 12 mentioned inferring the presence of Krishna, or the Supreme Lord, or you could say the Paramatma, right? And then text 13 talked about inferring the presence of the self, or the soul. And the way that I'm understanding is that, like, just like things are, you can infer one thing from the next, and you can infer something from that. Like, in other words, just like even where I'm situated, like people that are seeing right now, like the sun comes. I don't get direct sunlight in this apartment, right? The sun reflects off this building though, and brings a lot of light into the apartment. So I don't see the sun directly, but the sun will reflect off that building. That's one reflection. And then it'll light up my wall. Now it's reflecting off a second surface. And if I look at the wall and I think that wall is bright, well, it's not the wall that's bright, but the reflection is coming from the sun. And it's actually in between that there was another reflection too. So it's bouncing twice. So I should be able to infer. Like, in other words, say I slept I didn't know how long I slept, and I woke up and I didn't know what time it was, and then I looked at the wall and it was bright. I should be able to infer, that the sun is above at a certain angle right now, and it's the daytime, right? I can infer that. And so what this verse seems to be saying, it seems like Prabhupada, when he just writes, this is the perfect example. So maybe we can read the commentary, but for me, it's a little tricky. But it seems like it's saying that we can infer the presence of the self through the body and the mind. Like the body and the self is reflected on the body and the mind. The body and the mind are not us. But the fact that the body's here and the mind is here and it's adopted an identity means there has to be a jiva behind it, right? It's not going to do that on its own.
Okay. And the purport?
And then the second part is that to understand that the jiva exists means that we have to infer that the jiva comes from somewhere, and that's from the Paramatma, from the source of everything. I believe that that's what it's saying, that there's this double kind of reflection going, that we can infer from the body and mind, we can infer the existence of the soul, and from the soul we can infer the existence of the Paramatma. But I think, text 13, I think, is where Prabhupada's like, this is the perfect example. Is that 13, or is it maybe it's 12?
13.
No, 12.
Okay. Go back and read 12s.
Yeah.
All right. The example is given. The example given herewith, I never say herewith, is perfect. The sun is situated in the sky, far, far away from the surface of the earth, but its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark, and the sun is far away in the sky, but the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated, as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It's confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is the way the same two verses were translated in the edition from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that I have. A reflection in water reflected on a wall is inferred to come from the image reflected on the water, and the sun situated in the sky is inferred by the reflection on the water. Should I do that again?
Yes.
Are you listening?
Yes.
Okay. A reflection in water reflected on a wall is inferred to come from the image reflected on the water. Simple enough, yes?
Yep.
Okay. And the sun situated in the sky is inferred by the reflection on the water. So if I have, let's not say water, and let's say this well, let's go ahead and say water because most people can't look out my window right now. Yeah. But let's say you have the sun. The sun is being reflected off of a bowl of water, and that bowl of water is also reflecting off of a wall, right? So when you look at the wall, you can infer that it's coming from the reflection in the water. And when you look at the water, you can realize that the brightness there is reflected from the sun in the sky. That's all that was said so far. In a reflection in water reflected on a wall is inferred to come from the image reflected on the water. And the sun situated in the sky is inferred by this reflection on water. Similarly, the soul existing, let's simplify it. Similarly, the soul is inferred by its reflection in the body, senses, and mind. And from this, Paramatma is inferred by the jiva purified by bhakti. So I would love to hear more, like, bring in the spiritual scientists on this one or something like that. I think I understand it, but the full significance of it and maybe a certain simplicity in it, I'm not fully grasping, But it's saying that if you have a vision that's been purified by bhakti, if you've lived this lifestyle that's just been discussed, if you don't endeavor too hard to make money, and if you treat people equally, and if you live celibacy as it was discussed, and if you live in a secluded place as it's been described, and so on and so, and you've cultivated a certain depth of spiritual vision, then when you see a body and mind operating, even though it's adopted a false identity, you can understand that this is only happening by the presence of spirit, by a soul. And once you connect with that and see that soul, you can also understand that soul can only come from that Atma can only come from Paramatma. It also comes from a divine source that's the source of everything. And you not only understand this theoretically, but you kind of just like you move through the world with that vision, like steadily. That's how I understand it.
Head bobble. All right, Mara, what do you got for us? What can I go into this world? What little nuggets of wisdom, takeaways I can put in my pocket, apply it to my life when things are falling apart today? What do you have for us?
I got some good ones today.
Okay.
You can't make spiritual progress without faith.
Yeah.
Our greatest duty is to be trustworthy and live without hypocrisy. Don't become a slave to circumstances. Accept the externals as they are to focus on bhakti.
Yes.
We got to clean up our own act before we can clean up the earth.
Yeah.
Don't normalize selfishness. Get off your high horse and open your mind.
Yeah.
The self is reflected in the body and mind.
By the way, at Zoomville, we're only having very little horses, no high horses.
No high horses. And then be an agent of God and be an agent of good.
Agent of God, agent of good. That was very good. I'm looking forward to Zoomville personally, and Otherland and Zoomville.
You're not in Zoomville. You are just in Nashville. Live in the moment, Raghunath, okay?
Zoomville and Otherland, and we're going to play bocce ball. That's going to be the sport. Bocce ball and volleyball. Thanks, everybody. A bunch of people joined in late. People I haven't seen in a while. Welcome back. And just seeing these Zoomers as I'm clicking around my board here. Zoomville is real.